Then I heard my stepmother's voice cutting through the noise, high and sharp, telling someone to get me up off the floor. Like I was furniture that had fallen over. That's how my 43rd birthday ended. But let me back up about 4 hours, because what happened that night didn't start with a brass centerpiece. It started with a folded piece of paper slipped under my door that morning. No name on it. Just 7 words written in blue ink. Ask her where the money really went. I didn't know what it meant yet. I stuck it in my jacket pocket and forgot about it. We had a family dinner to get through. My dad had turned 72 the week before, and my stepmother Renata had organized a joint celebration at the house, my house, without really asking me. That should have told me something. I've lived in this house for 11 years.
My mother left it to me when she passed.
It's nothing fancy, but it's mine. Paid off, clean title, my name on the deed. Renata had been making small comments about the house for about a year. Nothing direct. Just little things here and there that I told myself didn't mean anything. I should have listened to what I was telling myself. The guests started arriving around 6. My dad married Renata about 6 years ago, roughly 2 years after my mother passed. I didn't fight it. He was lonely, and she seemed decent enough at first. Quiet. Polite. She'd bring food when she visited and ask about my work without pushing. But somewhere around year 3, something shifted. She started coming over more. Always with a reason, dropping something off, picking something up. And she'd walk through the rooms like she was measuring them. I noticed it, but didn't say anything. My dad was happy. I let it go. Her daughter, Priya, had gotten engaged about 8 months before the dinner. Nice enough guy on the surface. His name was Garrett. He worked in finance, drove a clean car, said the right things. My dad loved him immediately. Called him the son he never had, which landed a little sideways, but again, I let it go. What I didn't let go was a conversation I overheard about 3 months before the party. I was in the kitchen. Renata and my dad were in the hallway, and the door wasn't fully closed. She said something about making sure Miles is taken care of when the time came. My dad said, "He'll understand. He's reasonable." I stayed very still. I didn't walk out there. I just listened. But they moved toward the bedroom, and I lost the rest of it. That night I told myself it was probably about the will. Estate stuff. Nothing unusual. But that folded note in my pocket the morning of the party made me think maybe it was something else entirely. The dinner started normal enough. About 20 people, mostly Renata's side of the family, a few of my dad's old friends, 2 neighbors I actually liked. Garrett was working the room, shaking hands, laughing loud, refilling people's glasses before they had to ask. Priya stayed close to Renata most of the night, whispering back and forth. I watched them without making it obvious. Around 7:30 my dad stood up and gave a little toast. Said how grateful he was, how much family meant to him, how this house had always felt like a second home to him. That word stopped me. Second home. He said it easy, like it just slipped out. But Renata smiled when he said it, and it wasn't a warm smile. It was the kind of smile someone gives when a plan is moving along the way they hoped. I pulled out my phone and texted the number the note had come from. Just 2 words. Who are you? No reply. Not yet. After the toast, Renata asked everyone to stay seated. She said there was a small announcement. Priya and Garrett stood up together. Engagement party within the birthday dinner? Fine, expected. But then Renata started talking about the future.
About roots.
About how important it was for a young couple to have a stable place to begin their life together. Then she looked directly at me. Not at the room. At me. And she said, "We were hoping Miles would do the generous thing." The whole table went quiet. I kept my face completely still. But my hand, under the table, was gripping my phone so hard my knuckles went white. She didn't say it outright at first. She built up to it. Talked about family loyalty, about how my mother would have wanted the house to stay in the family, about how Priya and Garrett needed a foundation. Then my dad cleared his throat and said it plain. "We'd like you to sign the house over to them, Miles. As a gift." The room was so quiet I could hear the candles flickering. I looked at my dad. He wasn't looking back at me. He was looking at his plate. 60 years I'd known this man, and I could read him like a book. He was uncomfortable, which meant this wasn't fully his idea. Someone had coached him into that sentence. I said, "I'm not doing that."
Come.
No raised voice. Just those 4 words. Renata's expression changed fast. The warmth dropped right off her face. She started talking about everything they'd done for me, how much my dad had sacrificed, how ungrateful I was being in front of guests. I let her talk. Then my dad stood up. I thought he was going to calm things down. Instead, he grabbed the brass centerpiece off the table, heavy thing, maybe 4 pounds, and he swung it. I didn't move fast enough. It caught me above the left ear, and I went down hard. When I came to, maybe 2 or 3 minutes later, Garrett was standing at the head of the table holding a glass up like he was about to make a toast. The room was still full. Nobody had called anyone. Nobody had helped me up. Garrett had the floor now, and he was smiling in a way that made my stomach drop. I sat up slowly. My ear was ringing. There was blood on my fingers when I touched my temple. Someone handed me a napkin, one of my dad's old friends, a man named Carl, and he looked at me with an expression I'll never forget. Somewhere between pity and warning, Garrett was still talking. He was telling the room that he had something important to share, that he believed in honesty, that he thought everyone at this table deserved to know the full picture before any decisions were made tonight. I didn't know what he was doing yet, but I stayed on the floor for another few seconds just listening. Sometimes the best thing you can do is let people think you're still down. I reached into my jacket pocket. The note was still there.
My phone had a reply now.
1 line, "Check the joint account your dad opened with her in 2021. I read it twice. Then I put the phone away. Garrett kept talking. He said he'd recently discovered something about Renata. Something that changed how he saw her. How he saw this whole arrangement. He said he'd been engaged to Priya for 8 months, and in that time he'd learned things about her mother that he couldn't stay quiet about anymore. Priya grabbed his arm. He shook her off gently but firmly. Renata stood up. Her voice was sharp and low. She told him to sit down and think very carefully. He didn't sit down. I got up off the floor, walked to my chair, and sat down. Carl slid a glass of water toward me. I was done, being the one caught off guard. I'd had 3 weeks to prepare for something. I just hadn't known exactly what. After that overheard conversation in the hallway, I'd quietly contacted an estate attorney. I wanted to know exactly where I stood with the house. She confirmed what I already knew. The deed was clean, solely in my name, and no one could touch it without my signature. Not my dad, not Renata, nobody. But I kept going. I pulled every financial record I could access. My dad had added me to a small savings account back in 2019, mostly for emergencies. Through that I could see some of his transaction history. Not everything, but enough. In 2021, he'd opened a joint account with Renata. Routine for a married couple. But the withdrawals weren't routine. Large amounts, irregular intervals, always transferred to a third account I didn't recognize. I hired a forensic accountant. Quiet, professional, no drama. She worked for 2 weeks and handed me a report that was 41 pages long. Renata had been moving money out of my dad's retirement accounts since 2022. Small amounts at first, then larger ones. She had power of attorney over 2 of his accounts, something my dad had apparently signed without fully understanding what he was handing over. The total was just under $200,000. I had the report in a secured folder on my phone the entire night of the dinner. Now Garrett was standing up doing something I hadn't planned for. He was pulling out his own phone, reading from something. Dates, amounts, account numbers. He had the same report. I didn't know whether to be relieved or worried about why he had it. Garrett had gotten the report from the same accountant. That came out later. Turns out he'd found suspicious transfers in Renata's personal records about 6 weeks before the dinner. He'd hired someone independently. They'd ended up at the same woman, who, to her credit, had kept both engagements completely separate and legal. He wasn't doing this for me. He was doing it for himself. He'd realized the woman he was about to call his mother-in-law had been running a quiet financial operation for years, and Priya either knew or had looked away long enough that it amounted to the same thing. He read the whole thing out loud. Every number, every date, every transfer. The room stopped breathing. My dad sat down slowly, like the air had gone out of him. I watched his face move through confusion, then something harder. He looked at Renata. She was already building a defense, voice rising, calling the numbers out of context. I stood up. I didn't raise my voice. I just said that I'd filed a report with Adult Protective Services 3 days ago regarding financial exploitation of an elderly person, and that I'd forwarded the accountant's findings to a detective I'd spoken with twice that week. Then I told Renata that she had hit me, through my dad's hand, inside my own home, and that Carl had witnessed it, and that I'd be following up on that too. Carl nodded once from across the table. Renata looked at me like I'd pulled the floor out from under her. Because I had. 2 days later, she was served. My dad called me that night and didn't say a word for almost a minute. That phone call with my dad lasted about 40 minutes.
He cried.
Not the loud kind. The quiet kind that's harder to listen to. He kept saying he didn't know, and I believe he mostly didn't. Renata had been careful with him. Patient. She'd built his trust over years before she started moving money. That's how people like her operate. They don't rush. I didn't yell at him.
There was nothing in me that wanted to.
He was a 72-year-old man who'd been manipulated by someone he loved. Being angry at him felt like kicking someone while they were already down. What I did was get him a good attorney. Different from mine. Someone who specialized in elder financial abuse cases. The civil case moved faster than I expected. Renata's defense fell apart once the paper trail was laid out in full. She'd made the mistake people like her always make. She thought she was smarter than the documentation. She wasn't. The court ordered full restitution. It'll take time to recover everything, but the process is moving. She also faced a separate criminal filing. That one is still working through the system, but the DA took it seriously. Priya and Garrett didn't make it. He ended things about a month after the dinner. I don't know what happened between them, and I didn't ask. My dad sold his condo and moved into a smaller place closer to me. We have dinner on Sundays now. We don't talk about that night much. But sometimes he'll look at me across the table with this expression that says everything neither of us knows how to put into words. I kept the house.